It's just that kind of when you're really into someone and you just can't stop looking at them. That's eye banging. It's
But
just like,
like in a really creepy way.
I mean, not intentionally, but like considering who I was and what I was like at the time, then almost certainly was creepy to everyone but me. I was going for kind of like smoldering and mysterious and sexy, but it almost certainly came across as just incredibly creepy.
Hello, my name is Kay Anderson, and you are listening to Lost Spaces, the podcast that mourns the death of queer nightlife. Every episode, I talk to a different person about a venue from their past, the memories they created there, and the people that they used to know. Now, if you were queer in London in the noughties, then you would no doubt have spent a lost evening or two at Popstarz, the alternative institution that is most well known for being held at Scala in King's Cross. I caught up with the host of the filthy, probably true podcast, Scott Flashheart, to talk all about his first days in London, vodka coughs, and the lost art of eye banging across the dance floor. So, Popstars.
Yeah. It was the first gay club I came to in London, the first proper gay club I ever came to. Unless you count NG1 in Nottingham, and no one really does because
I've been to
it's a little bit.
NG1.
Me too. Did they play It's Raining Men?
I don't remember. It was my boyfriend at the time's brother's stag do.
Oh, who's your boyfriend at the time? I probably slept with him.
It's Peter. Yeah, you would have slept with him.
Pro-
And for some reason, I don't know, like I have no idea. I have no idea why I was even invited to go to this thing, but I went to this thing and then um so his brother was straight and everyone in the stag do was straight except for one other person who was his brother's friend. And so for some reason, they decided that they would go to this gay bar. So it was this like bunch of straight men
lads.
and they were all super awkward about being there.
All right, so it wasn't like, yeah, let's go and do this. Yeah, it'd be great. It'd be really, let's go for the laugh.
Yeah,
Like they were actually really, they were kind of like didn't really want to be there.
well,
That's
like
odd.
maybe they thought they were like really cool to go, and then they got there and they were like, "Oh shit!" So I don't know. And then it was like this thing, like, so you're all really awkward. Shall we just go somewhere else? And then I think everyone had paid the entrance fee, so everyone had committed, and then they just stood around and like looked miserable. So
Right.
standard night out.
Yeah.
But anyway,
But
NG1, forget that.
yeah,
Popstars, your first night out. So when did you move to London?
I moved to London in 2007. I'd already been to Popstars a few times by then, actually, because I had a friend who lived in London, and I would come down and visit him, and he would take me to Popstars, and that was like one of the cool nights out. We do either Popstars, um, GAY when it was a story at the Astoria, or the Ghetto, which was
Oh, the ghetto, yeah.
the Ghetto, which
But like Popstars has this kind of like legendary vibe thing going on,
yeah.
doesn't it? Like anyone who lived in London in the mid noughties did something at Popstars at some point.
It was an institution, I think,
Oh yeah, that's a
definitely.
much better way of saying it.
But it moved around so much. It was, and all of my memories of that place are very, very blurry because I used to,
So
you
what are we
know,
going to talk about?
I don't know. I mean, I can tell you the bits I can remember, and you can like fill me in because you've been there and stuff. We were probably there on the same night sometimes
Probably. So why did you move to London?
because I felt like I was wasting my life in the Midlands, and at least if I was in London, I'd be able to like shag some interesting boys and maybe have some fun while waiting to die. Um, so
Okay,
yeah.
cheery. And what are your strongest memories of that? The first few months in London?
Oh,
'Cause 2007, what's this? This is like when Amy
yes.
Winehouse was big.
Yes, Amy
Lily
Winehouse
Allen.
was big.
Lily Allen was big.
Yeah, Lily Allen, Amy Winehouse. It
Uh,
was around the time of that MGMT song. I remember the first guy I properly dated in London um, downloaded that, like ripped the CD and gave me a
oh,
copy of the CD.
oh, so romantic.
I know, right? Um, we just used to eat pizza, and we used to we didn't even go out. We like mostly stayed in my room, eating pizza and watching movies, which was great. I quite liked that as a at the time. Um, since then, I've kind of gone, oh yeah, there are other experiences beyond getting fat and watching movies.
It's life outside
Um,
your apartment. Um,
there was until the world ended, and now that's all it. Now that I'm doing that again, except it's not with this cute guy who's covered in tattoos. It's with my mother, who only has one tattoo and doesn't like pizza. So
doesn't like pizza.
no, makes her real.
Mm, uh,
But that's irrelevant.
How,
Back to
wait.
2007.
How does it make her ill?
She's lactose intolerant.
Well, just get like a pizza without cheese. Sorry, anyway, sorry.
No,
But what about like the vegan cheese?
it's not cheese.
No, but like, it'll give her something to do with in her mouth.
Yeah, but then I'd have to eat it too.
Well, you get one each.
But then I'd eat a whole pizza. That's a lot of pizza.
Uh-huh.
And
What's your point?
I mean, you make a good point.
Uh, so so you moved to London. You spent a lot of time in your room. How are we
I
getting
did.
to
Well,
Popstars?
let me tell. Shall I tell you the story? Okay.
Okay.
Before I moved to London, I finished my degree in Derby, where I was living. Um, I trained as a professional masseur. I was working in a place and being absolutely miserable. And my old housemate, who lived in London, who was from like Guildford or somewhere just outside London, had already moved to central London. And every now and then I would go down and visit him and have a little bit of a life that I felt like I was missing. Back in Derby, where there were exciting people and interesting places to go and new things to see and do. Just kind of living the big city lifestyle that everyone wants to live. And I'd watched too much Sex in the City, so I was all kind of romanticized about it and all that kind of thing. And so I moved to, and so eventually my old housemate who'd moved down there, he rang me up one day to complain that his flatmate was moving out, and I complained back at him that I felt like I was that I was miserable and that I was hating my life in Derby, and I felt like I was just waiting to die, which is what you do in the Midlands. It's kind of all there is, but it wasn't for me.
Wait, so you were in
Excuse
your
me.
you were in your 20s, or like I'm just
Yes, I
assuming,
would have been what I'd have been 23
and
at
you were
this
just
point.
like, oh, I'm just there's no point living.
Not so much no point in living, but I wasn't enjoying anything I was doing. Derby's a very small. It's a city technically, but it's just a medium-sized town. There's not much there. There's not much going on. It was just not right for me, and I felt very kind of confined and lost, and like I wasn't making the most of my youth and young manhood,
Okay.
if you will. Um, and so we basically had this phone call where we both complained at each other, and he just went, "Well, why don't you move down here and move into my spare room? Because now we have a spare room and we need to fill it, and I'd rather you live here than someone else." And I just kind of went, "Okay." And 2 weeks later, I moved to London with one friend, no job, no money, no plan, and enough money to pay the rent for 3 months.
Well, that's the way you
That
do
was it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like it worked out. I've been there 13 years now. I mean, uh, Corona may well end that, and I might have to move back to my parents permanently, or at least for a longer stretch. But up to now, like a 13-year streak is not bad, really, as things go. I suppose.
No.
Yeah. So I went fuck it and moved and just took the leap, or whatever that phrase is supposed to be. Yeah, and I'm really glad I did because I got to be miserable in a completely different city with a much larger cast of disappointing men, which is
and much
nice, you know.
smaller flats. Yeah.
Yes, I paid more for my room in Vauxhall in a house than I had paid for my house in Derby.
Yeah, but let's just not focus on that. Like it's just not.
No, please let's
It's
not
just
focus
not.
on
It's
that.
just not. Like just don't give any mental energy to it. But like, do you remember those first few months? Like, how did that feel? Were you like ecstatic? Were you terrified? Or were you something else?
I When I first moved, I remember the first night as I was sat in this room with these and this new housemate, the guy that I'd moved down to hang out with, my new best friend in London. I saw him on and off for the next 3 months, and then he moved out. So I was
Oh,
essentially
bastard.
alone the whole time. But I remember sitting there amongst all these boxes on this futon that I slept on for 4 years because there was no bed in this room and I couldn't afford to buy my own. And I just kind of sat down, and just as it all started to catch up with me, and I was just about to sit and have a really good cry and really get it out, there was a knock at the door, and my other housemate and his boyfriend had got a bottle of wine and a joint, and they were waiting for me downstairs, and they were like, "Come join us. We'll have a chat and we'll get to know you and stuff." And I was like, "Oh, that's actually really nice." And so I never got around to feeling sorry for myself about having moved, and it was exciting and. Yeah, I don't know if everyone does this in London, but I did the thing where I would explore using the tube, and like different tube stops would be like my point of reference, and I would kind of explore outwards from tube stations. And then when I started to get as far as another tube station, I'd be like, oh wow, I know where that is on the tube map. I've kind of and it became this weird kind of each tube station was essentially this little village. And then as they spread out in my head and connected up, I got a bigger feeling for the whole city. And I had a little, this is in the olden days before we had phones with maps and shit on them.
Oh
Anyway,
well,
yeah, and I used to have a little,
I couldn't. When I first moved to London, I couldn't get the tube because it was too confusing for me. Like when I got out, and like it was just completely like okay, so anyone who's never been to London or like doesn't live in a city where there's undergrounds, so many of the tube stations are so close to each other, and
especially in the center.
especially in the center. And if you just go to this one station, get up, go to the place that you were supposed to go to, get back onto the tube, and then go away, and then do that for everything that you're ever doing at any point in time, you just have no idea what the shape of the city is like and how all the streets connect and how everything works. And so that's what was happening to me. And I just had like no clue. So I had to just start catching the bus everywhere. And then things made sense.
I can understand that completely. I think I was more nervous that I would get on the wrong tube,
No-
or I would get on the wrong
Oh,
bus,
yes, there's that.
because there was no because the bus maps were even more confusing than the tube map. Whereas with the tube, at least I could go, all right, I'm getting on at Vauxhall, and if I get on this one, the next stop will be Pimlico. And if it wasn't Pimlico, I knew I was on the wrong one, and I had to change right away. And then
Swap over to
because I
the
was
other
going in the wrong
platform.
direction. Yeah. Whereas, like one time when I'd come down to London years earlier, I'd run away with an Australian, but that's another story. And we were in London, and we were trying to get to Soho, and we got on this bus, and we ended up in fucking Penge or somewhere
Ooh.
like, and it was going in the wrong direction. We got on the bus on the wrong side of the road and ended up out in the suburbs somewhere on a Saturday night at like 11 o'clock, and it was terrifying. And this is long before mobile phones were a thing. So I think that kind of scarred me. So after that, like I always wanted to know that I was like, all right, so this is Pimlico, so the next one's Victoria, and after that it's Green Park, and after that is Oxford Circus, and I'm getting off at Oxford Circus, so it's only four more stops, and then I kind of count them down. I watch as we pulled in. Like, there's no way if we're going in the right direction, and the first one that we got to was the right one, there was no possible way that the second, third, or fourth ones wouldn't be the right ones. But I still would like nervously check out of the window every time we pulled into a station to make sure I was going the right
You
way.
have to be sure. And but if the tube is so busy that you have to stand and you can't see what station you're coming into when you come into it because your eye line's cut off, that's so stressful. You just want to put that out there.
Yes.
So what were we saying?
So
Pizza?
that was fun. Yes. So then I got a job in central London as a masseur, working in a beauty salon in Soho. So yeah, I was a masseur who worked in Soho, and you can imagine all of the jokes that
Oh
came out of that
yeah.
one. Yeah. But I was very very good, and I very rarely gave happy endings, and I certainly didn't
Hang on,
charge for them.
very
They
rarely.
yeah,
What kind of percent? If
hardly
we
at
were doing
all.
this as a percentage, what would it be?
Oh, less than 1%.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they had to be. I had to be into. I had to fancy them. They had to be up for it, and there had to be the opportunity to make it happen because often, you know, it wasn't like the massage tables were only separated by curtains. It's not like we had a boudoir or any kind of
What? So there were like
space.
other massage tables on either side of the curtain.
There were three of these kind of massage tables, but the place was also was primarily used for beauty treatments. So a lot of the tables, if the tables were being used, they were almost always being used for waxing, like leg waxing and Brazilian waxes and stuff like that. We were very proud of the fact that our girls could get a Brazilian wax done in under 3 minutes.
No time for pain.
Yeah, so it's gonna hurt, but if it's gonna hurt, you want it over with quickly, and we could, yeah. So that was the salon's thing, was it was all about how quickly we could get shit done.
Okay, and so did that extend to happy endings?
I mean, when you've had a massage, you're very in your body anyway. So yeah, usually the happy ending does not take long at all. Bless them. I think there were only like 4 or 5 guys in the whole like 4 years that I worked there that ever got happy endings, and they were all guys that I
But
fancied anyway, so it didn't really matter.
but then so like, how do you know that they're up for that? Is it like for the obvious? Is it the obvious
Yeah, it
clue?
tends to be the obvious way. Yeah.
But like, do men often just get boners when you're doing it?
No, so that's how you can tell. Like very rarely would a guy who, I think once or twice, guys that weren't after that would accidentally get boners or like inadvertently get boners. Um, and very often they were embarrassed and like tried to hide it or whatever. And I'm like, don't worry, it happens all the time, and carry on because it's not a problem. But
Yeah,
then the
yeah.
ones that were interested wouldn't be trying to hide it, and they'd be trying to nudge your hands up against it and stuff like that, and you just be like, ugh, I know where this is going. Yeah,
Oh,
and like if I wasn't into them, I'd just ignore it or say something like, "I'm sorry, if I do that, I'll lose my license. Sorry," kind of thing. And then if they did, if I did fancy them, then obviously I'd help them out.
so did these men tip?
Um, Occasionally, but I felt I had a very I didn't have quite as my attitude towards sex work at the time was a little less evolved than it is now, so
Uh,
it made me uncomfortable if they tipped. Uh, so I preferred I didn't charge extra for it, and if they tipped and it was like £2 or £3, I'd be like, well, that seems an insult more than anything. Yeah, I mentioned this to a friend of mine who was Spanish, so English wasn't his first language, and we were talking about this, and I was saying, oh, no, I was a masseur, and we talked about the happy endings and stuff, and he's like, ah, so you were a whore, and I'm like, no, I didn't charge, like I never charged, and he's like, oh, so you're a stupid whore. I'm like, I mean, harsh, but yeah, accurate, I suppose. But
oh,
yeah, so that was my first 4 years in Soho, running a beauty salon and massaging occasionally horny men. It was fun. I enjoyed it, and it was a good pickup line. If I'm honest, like I'm a professional masseur, because then everyone would just be like, "Ooh, give me a rub," and then it would go from there, and I'd end up like rubbing more than just their shoulders.
but was that not tedious?
Yeah, yeah, it was because it was like I mean, it would be like someone going, "Oh, I'm a professional barista," and you're going, "Oh, cool, make me a coffee." I'm like,
Yeah, yeah. Or like, I'm a podcast host. Oh, cool.
"No, we have
Talk.
no useful skills. That doesn't work." Like,
Yeah, no, people are just like, oh, I don't want to hear about this because I don't want you to expect me to listen to this. Okay, so pop stars.
oh shit, yeah.
So, do you remember the first time that you went there?
Vaguely, yes, very very vaguely. Yeah.
And do you want to tell me about that?
Oh right, okay. Yeah, I think I just remember it being big. It was a lot bigger than I was
Ah,
expecting.
so
Because
big.
it was so big, and it was and I really liked the kind of it had a kind of faded decadence to it. There was a it was all kind of Art Deco-y kind of. I think it was Art Deco-y. Like the building was Art Deco-y, and then it had this like gay club happening inside it, and you just think, oh, the faded grandeur of it all. It used to be so much nicer than this. It's lost.
No, it
It,
was so
how the mighty have fallen.
so. So, for those who don't know, the
Oh
Scala is a venue in King's Cross in central London, and is like a big theatre, and they do like live gigs there, and it's usually it's a gig venue. So, and it's kind of like a big old ballroomy type thing. So you go
yeah,
in, and there's
like
steps
an
up.
old dance hall or something. I
Yeah,
think maybe. Yeah.
and it's like cavernous. It's incredible. There is when it was Popstars, because that night was every Friday night. They had the main dance floor was the alternative dance floor, and then there was a
Yes.
dance floor upstairs that was like trashy pop, and then there was like a bar in the middle. I don't know if
But
that ever like
the
settled
really
on a genre.
that one in the middle, like it had this very small room that would now be about the size of a medium-sized living room or a one-bedroom flat, a studio apartment in central London. So not very big at all. That had like light up walls and I think maybe a light up floor as well. And it was always kind of R&B and like or hip hop or something that just didn't fit with the other two nights. You had trashy pop and you had the alternative kind of rock kind of night room, and then for some reason there was also the kind of I always thought of it as straight guy music. It was all kind of like
What?
it just felt like it was always full of straight boys. I'm sure it wasn't, and I'm sure that was just me being a horrible person because I was a horrible person.
Just
Um,
you're garden variety heterophobe.
I know, right? But hetero is so awful. Like it's not so much a phobia as it is a learned response. But anyway, um, yeah, for me, I always remember it as being an R&B or similar, like really odd genre to put with the other two that were kind of
That's not odd. But anyway,
yeah.
I just remember going into that room because that was where you like got to sit down and chill out. So I don't really remember the music at all, but I remember
I
that
just
just
used
being
to
like the like, oh, I'm sick of the dance floor. Shall we go and sit in that room?
I always used to go and sit upstairs in the trashy pop room, like against the wall. That's always where I end up sitting. But I was with this friend who absolutely loved to dance, and dancing is not my thing. I don't mind doing it a bit, but I'm not particularly coordinated. And this is why I don't like clubbing
Oh
because I'm
God, yeah, I
not
was gonna say like, why even bother going out?
well because because I didn't have any other friends. So yeah, if I didn't go out with him, I didn't go out, and I'm like, all right, well, I still want to go out, and I kissed a few boys every okay, very rarely, but I did occasionally kiss a boy in there. Um, and it was fun and we danced around and I'd be exhausted because I'd been at work since 10 a.m. and I'd finish at like 6:30, 7 p.m. and by then
And not go home.
I'd either run home and get changed and then have to go straight out to meet my friend
Yeah.
and then go to Popstars. Like we'd go to Trash Palace first probably and uh, have a drink or depending on when and where I was meeting him, I'd meet him. I'd go straight from work to Trash Palace because it was just around the corner,
Yeah, yeah.
and what have you. And yeah, so I was always absolutely exhausted, and trying to like stay buzzed on a couple of pints of Red Stripe, a couple of cans of Red Stripe or whatever this crappy bar in La Scala was selling.
Mm.
Um,
And are you one of those friend like there's just no way of me saying this politely. But are you just
don't
one of
worry.
those friends that then he just gets annoyed with because you're not going to dance and he wants to dance and you're just like standing
Probably. I
against
mean,
the
like
wall?
I say, he moved out 3 months after I moved into the flat with
And
him, and we've barely
it was
spoken
all because of
since.
the pop stars.
Oh no, I'm sure I must be pretty annoying to live with at the best of times. So I'm sure he had plenty of reasons to not live with me anymore. Um, but yeah, he loved to dance. It was like his thing, and it was just not mine. It's still not mine. In fact, if anything, it's less mine now than it was then.
And so then what do
Um,
you do in a club if you don't
I
dance? You
don't go
just,
to clubs anymore. I
okay.
just don't, unless like once, when the planets align and the spring is upon me, then I'll go out and I'll have a dance in a club. But it happens very, very rarely. Whereas we'd go to Popstars every Friday night. I'd be completely knackered. I'd also be quite poor, minimum wage, living in central London, not a lot of disposable income. Um, and so I wouldn't be able to get very drunk. I would be absolutely knackered, and I'd just kind of like sit miserably at the side and have a horrible time.
Sure.
But
Wait,
which is weird because the
memories.
but
So
I was going to say, but the memories I have of being in pop stars are always really positive. Like I had a good time,
okay, so
weirdly.
then talk me through like a general night. So you've
Oh,
been like you've had your pre-drinks, you've got there so you can get in before like full door charge or before like the queue gets like so ridiculous that you have to stand
yeah.
outside for too long.
We
And
usually get there about 11ish,
okay.
11:30. Like if it was a comfortable night, then yeah, about 11:30. So before midnight. I think it was more expensive after midnight.
And so
I can't remember.
you get through the door, you've passed the security guard's arbitrary test, and then you pay your door charge or not because it's cheaper or it's free. I can't remember. And then you go up the stairs. What happens? Do you break off from your friend immediately? Do you go to a dance floor? He takes up dancing. You stand against the wall.
I would always work the room. I would always kind of like have a wander around, see whose eye I could catch, and all that kind of thing. Bear in mind that at this time I was not as stylish and charming as I seem now. I was scruffy and angry and tired and not drunk enough.
Oh
So often,
God.
I'm sure I put guys off. I don't think I was a particularly attractive person in my mid 20s at all. Um,
But so how do you
so
do like how if yeah, how do you scour the room?
don't scour the
What
room.
so
You
what were your
work the
words then?
room.
Sorry.
I would work the room. I
Yeah.
would just kind of like wander around, see who was there, because there were so many like familiar faces that you just saw every time. And I'd say hi if I bumped into someone I knew and that kind of thing, and just have a drink and look around, see who I thought was cute and who I was gonna obsess over but not actually talk to.
So if you thought
Um,
someone was cute, is that what you would do? You would just kind of like linger
yeah, because I didn't
and
have any kind of
wait for them to
social
make a
skills, or
move.
that no one ever made a move on me. That's not how this works.
No,
It's
okay,
not how
okay,
this
but
has ever
like,
worked.
but in your like in your head at that point, were you like, maybe if I just like stand here, they'll spill a drink on me, and then they'll have to talk to me because they'll have to apologize? Or were you ever proactive?
I was always proactive because I'd tried that before. Like I had when I was at university, I had those kind of skinny, well-dressed, like really horribly bitchy, toxic gays who were like the attractive ones, and I was the scruffy, fat, hairy, like angry, entirely the opposite of them in every way. So they would happily stand. They wouldn't, some of them wouldn't even dance, and they would certainly never make the first move. They'd stand at the side of the dance floor and wait for someone to come up to them. And I had tried this myself, and all that happened was I got bored and I got lonely. And all of my friends would do that and would pull because they were all skinny and hot and stylish, and I would just be stood there looking dumpy and hairy and angry. Or I'd get like ruinously drunk and make a tit of myself. That happened quite often as well. But in Popstars, I used to spend most of my time in the main room. I loved that big room, and the music was good, and the guys were always hotter. I've got such a thing for kind of alternative rock kind of guys, and so I would just be like, oh, over all these guys that I couldn't have.
See, this is so the thing that I always think about with pop stars is the thing that is my main takeaway is that like everyone who went was like, oh, it's an alternative night, it's alternative and queer, and like you've got to remember at the time like that was a big deal because you didn't really have anything like
Yeah,
that. Um,
I
but
mean, do we have anything like that now? I suppose
well,
like
I
East
mean,
London,
yeah,
like
yeah,
Dalston
yeah. I think you do
and the
have quite,
Glory and all
you've
that
got
kind
quite.
of. Yeah. Anyway,
Um,
sorry, carry on.
but then you'd get there, and then everyone would want to be in the trashy pop room on the top floor, and the alternative floor was just dead.
Yes.
And everyone would have
Yeah,
like their skinny jeans on, but like no one was actually interested in listening to that music.
apart from there'd be like three or four like gay hardcore rockers with the actual like long hair and the beards and all that kind of thing, who had found their place and were only at their happiest when they were moshing in the middle of this kind of like rocky kind of floor. I think they even used to do like an hour of thrash metal, or a few, like half an hour maybe. There was a chunk of the night that was thrash metal in the main room, or at least like heavy metal for these guys. And there was a little tribe of them, and none of them were attractive to me. So like my memory of them is only kind of, oh, they're playing that music. Okay, I should go upstairs now.
I don't remember that. I just remember the alternative music
I
wasn't
mean,
really like,
alternative music is a little bit of a stretch.
yeah.
Like alternative music, it was like Mr. Brightside,
Oh,
and
and
did you ever go round what would have been the backstage area back when it was a theatre or a
no,
dance
no,
hall or whatever it
never.
was? Oh yeah, like it wasn't in any way cordoned off, but it felt very much like you weren't supposed to be around there. And there were like little what must have been dressing rooms off of this. There was the stage,
What? So you
and
just
then there
stumbled
was this
into
like
them?
yeah, it was like a C-shaped corridor. There was a toilet back there, which I think was why it was open to us,
Oh,
because
okay, yeah.
if you needed to pee. But it was a C-shaped corridor that ran all the way around the back of the stage, and there were some rooms off it that were like dressing rooms or similar, and those rooms were always full of the scene kids doing coke. Like if you were cool enough, you were in one of those rooms doing lines of coke while someone watched the door. But I was never cool enough. All I got was like, the only reason I knew that was happening was because as I came around the corner, they'd be like, someone's coming.
Here comes that angry looking guy.
Yeah, and then they just kind of like silently watch me from the doorway until I walked past, and then like they go back to their fat rails or whatever. I remember like one of the guys who was always in the downstairs room, who I was madly in love with, was Sweaty Topless Guy. I remember he had, I think he must have dyed his hair black, and he would always start dancing.
Why did you give him that nickname?
Because he was always topless, and he would dance so much that he would sweat a lot. And he was kind of young. He was kind of an alternate twink, kind of thing. I think his name was Baz, and and he had that kind of emo hairstyle, and I was in love with him. I never spoke to him, but I would
Well,
like,
how did you know his name then?
oh, because I think on the Facebook group or something, like someone tagged him in a photo, or everyone knew who he was because he was always there, and he was always the skinny, not even that skinny. He was like he was very sexy boy with his top off, who danced around to him so much that he sweat, and
Baz, if you're
he never
out
had his
there,
top on.
and
Yeah,
you're listening
Baz.
to this
If
episode, get in touch.
and did you ever go for the New Year's parties at Popstarz?
I don't know. I'm not a very like. I'm one of those people who's like, oh oh New Year's. I'm not going to be able to get in. I'm not going to be able to use the toilet because there's going to be too many people. There's just no point. I'll just stay at home.
As am I, but as we've discovered, like my own feelings were never really the top of my list when it came to this kind of thing. So I would do what everyone else wanted because I wanted to be one of the cool kids, which is exhausting and not much fun. And the New Year's Eve nights, they would have these massive air cannons on the sides of the stage, and huge, like taller than me and much broader than me. So they must have been like 8 feet tall, cylindrical bags full of polystyrene balls, like the tiny little, the little white bubbles that they crush into shapes to turn into like the stuff that you put in boxes to keep your TV safe or whatever. Huge bags of those before they got crushed. So these little tiny, like smaller than peas, but made of that like super light stuff. And someone's job would be to shovel them into these air cannons that just blasted them across the room. So it was essentially just like fake snow, like falling on the inside of this massive ballroom type area in the Scala every New Year's Eve or every Christmas or whenever their fucking party was every year. And those things would turn up months later. Like I would be finding them in my room these little white polystyrene balls in fucking April for no reason, and I wouldn't know where they'd come from, but I'd know exactly how they'd ended up in my bedroom because whatever I'd been wearing that night had brought them home with me. And Baz, bless him, dancing around without his top on, he'd be so sweaty that these little white balls would just stick to him. He was absolutely covered, like any bit of flesh was lost to a sea of little white bubbles I loved him. I had such a thing for him.
And like, so you never talked to him?
I'd forgotten about him until we started talking about him.
But you never talked to him or anything? You just...
Never spoke to him. Never ever spoke to him.
It's just this ingenue that's just like on the dance floor.
In the distance, this beautiful young man that was out having a lovely time, an amazing time, and I was envious of the time he was having because I never really got into it because it wasn't my vibe and I hadn't realised that yet. But also he was handsome and he seemed fun.
Would it help if I said that he's probably really dull? Like, you've never talked to him, so you don't know. But odds are, I mean, most people are really dull. So, odds are
most people are really dull. I mean, I'm really dull.
Yeah,
I don't do much.
Yeah.
Rude. And, like, I'm getting old now. I'm, like, in my late 20s. Shut the fuck up.
I'm not saying anything. You can identify whatever age you want.
Mm-hmm. I'm in my extremely late 20s because I'm 38. That is really quite late 20s, isn't it? Anyway, yeah. So dull is okay now. I mean, to a point.
What? Like, so you were still in love with him? I'm not like dull as in like he stays home and like is into crochet. I just mean like he just has like really boring opinions and is not much fun to talk to. Kind of dull. You don't care, do you?
Yeah, maybe. I don't know, but it's that thing of he'll always be perfect because I never got to know him. He exists in potential only. The waveform was never collapsed. He's both the perfect particle and also the tedious wave at the same time.
So okay,
and there's
Baz, if you are
no way to find out.
Don't get in touch. Just turn this episode off. Just bugger off. Like,
no,
interested.
He definitely should.
Scott does not want to know you because he just wants this perfect.
He really does. Scott really does.
Baz, no, Baz. Right.
Baz.
So you got to the club and then you did your little like, I'm going to go off and like skulk and like look mean and menacing.
Well, I'd enjoy the music. Like while they were playing the music I liked, I'd be in the big room downstairs and I'd be hanging around trying to be cool and trying to be one of those boys. And I could never get the eyeliner to work for me. So I didn't even get to.
Oh, but did you try?
Pose properly. Yeah, of course I tried.
I never tried.
Yeah, I did eyeliner. I wore. I think my favorite outfit. I don't know why. My favorite outfit was baggy brown pinstripe trousers with a bright pink T-shirt that had something gay on it. I think it said "I want to be your cowboy" or something like that. Or it was equally like camp and silly T-shirt. That was very tight, which wouldn't have been that flattering as I was a bit chunky, but I wore it.
Well,
anyway.
I mean, we all wore tight t-shirts then.
Yeah, it was the thing was like baggy trousers, tight t-shirts before it became skinny jeans and like a shirt. Or do you remember skinny jeans and waistcoat? Do you remember skinny jeans and waistcoat? Yeah, I tried that once. I looked like a pirate lesbian. It was not a good look on me.
Why is that not a good look?
It just didn't work. Like, had I wanted to be a lesbian pirate, it would have been fine.
And the and the thing about the baggy jeans was that like you had to have them hanging. Oh, and you wore your American Apparel underpants underneath that were brightly coloured. So like,
yes, bright coloured underpants.
So that amazing.
I had some red and black checkered ones.
Oh.
Because that was the proper kind of Fallout Boy scenester kind of thing. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and you just had your like butt showing over the top of the jeans.
Yeah,
because the jeans
in your little H&M pants because they were always the brightest colours of the H&M ones. They were £5 a pair. Oh, there were chains. Like everyone's wallet was on a chain.
Yes. and a studded belt.
and a skinny tie
Oh,
and a bit of eyeliner. It's very Pete Wentz, I think. Was that a
yeah.
person? Have I made that up?
Yeah. Are you, Pete? Yeah, he's from Fall Out Boy, isn't he?
Let's say yes. I'm not going to look
Wait,
it up.
was he married to Ashley Simpson?
I honestly don't know.
Pete Wentz. I'm looking it
I
up.
used to fancy. I used to fancy him and the dude from Brian Molko as well. Oh,
Oh, I never got that with Brian. I never got it.
yeah.
So many people fancied him.
Not anymore. Father Time has really taken a bat to him, bless him. None of us can
Oh,
help how we age, of course, but I think all that drugs and partying in his 20s has kind of burnt it out a bit.
so yes,
Not that I want to talk.
for fact finders, Pete Wentz was in Fall Out Boy, and yeah, was married to Ashley Simpson. I wonder what Ashley Simpson's doing today. So get back. Let's get back. So you went in.
Okay,
you,
yeah.
Like
So I would go in. I would like grab a drink from the bar. I would queue for like half an hour for a bottle for a can of warm Red Stripe. I would work my way around the
and
dance
can we just like the bars in the Scala were so stressful because they were so long, and there was like five or six,
Yes.
like maybe like 3 or 4 people working the bar, and so you would always be like trying to get someone's attention, and someone would show up like after you showed up, and they would get served before you, and it was really horrible.
It was like it was one of those places where, in theory, there must be a place where you can stand that will help you get served, but it was never the place where you actually end up stood. You always ended up stood between the beats of two of the barmen. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like they
yeah,
both
yeah.
have their little areas, and somehow wherever you stood, you'd end
on
up
the border.
between. Yeah, so no one would ever serve you. And
Oh, it was just so horrible, and I would just like, I would just get unnecessarily stressed about it.
and they had that horrible vodka that gave me a cough.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Like vodka cough was a thing. It was
So
like
what, because it was really
Glenn's
cheap?
or Vladigood or something. Yeah, the
Vladigood.
really shitty vodka. Vladigood vodka. Definitely wasn't Smirnoff or anything. Not that Smirnoff's particularly good, but it definitely wasn't anything that you'd heard of. It was the cheap shit that would make you blind if you drank enough of it. Yeah, horrible stuff. I can taste it. I can taste it now as we're doing this. Just ugh.
And then you'd
yeah,
line
I would
for
do
ages,
that.
get your drink, off you go. Look angry.
I'd go and hang out in the main room, and I'd dance around a bit, and I'd like eye bang some guy who would get intimidated and run away. I'd go and pee in the toilet near where all the twinks were doing their coke. I'd go and queue up for another drink or something, and then like as the music got too heavy or as I got bored, I'd kind of drift upstairs to the trashy pop room. That I think must have originally been like the balcony of the, like looking down onto the main stage. And I don't think they even walled it off. I think it was just a massive kind of tarpaulin curtain or something. Because I remember, I don't remember this. This never happened to me, but I remember like being told that like if you pulled, you could like sneak off behind that curtain and get a little bit sexy, and no one could see you because you were like tucked away in the dark, out of the way. And so I was taught like, should it ever happen, that's where I needed to go. And I'm like, okay, good, I'll remember that. And that information is in my head, and it has been used as many times as like how to escape quicksand, which at the time when you were little seemed like escaping quicksand was going to be a big deal in later life and something that you needed to learn. And so I committed like, don't thrash around, move slowly and deliberately, try and spread your weight out is how you get out of quicksand. And you know, if you pull in Popstarz, sneak off behind the curtain for a bit of a snog and a hand job. Neither of those things have been useful in my life at all.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
But
It's not your fault. Well, I mean, if you were at Popstarz, then you didn't like want to have a snog and a wank with me either. So you know, partly it's your fault.
Or I could have got off with Baz.
And broken my little heart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
taking him away from
How
you. Like
dare
that,
you?
like on the night that he was like, that angry guy who keeps out eye banging me. I might give him a shot. I came and swooped in and
I mean,
took him
he
away.
was a cutie and he was a face. I think everyone knew who he was. So like I'm
I
sure
don't know who he
he
is.
had his little harem or his little his go-tos. I mean, maybe he had a boyfriend. Maybe he was happily monogamous the entire time. I've no idea. He just seemed to be he was so happy and so kind of having fun and it was adorable and he was hot and cute and cheekbones. Ugh. Wanked myself sore, I did.
Oh,
I know, romantic, isn't it?
oh.
And so then I'd end up in the trashy pop room upstairs for the last hour or so, and there'd be some Pussycat Dolls, or were they around then, or was that too early?
Yeah,
It all
yeah.
kind of blurs. I think Atomic Kitten. Uh,
Oh,
yeah, and
there's
like
definitely girls allowed.
yeah, some early Girls Aloud. Push the Button, I think, was one of my
Oh,
yeah. That would
okay.
definitely have
Yeah,
been around
sugar
then. That was
babes.
like that. Yeah, Sugar Babes. But I remember Push the Button was one of my favorite songs. Um, yeah, around that time. And they probably
S-
played Mr. Brightside upstairs as well because it was one of those
Oh,
songs that was just
probably
everywhere,
just
and that
ubiquitous.
you look back and you think Jesus fucking Christ, but at the time it was
The
just
song that sticks out for me is "What You Waiting For" by Gwen Stefani.
yes. Oh,
Just used to think that was so cool, and now it's like, mm, that whole album campaign is a little problematic.
oh, I don't remember. I remember the song, and that
So I wanted to talk
yeah.
about eye banging.
Oh fuck. All right.
So how do you do it?
It's just that kind of when you're really into someone and you just can't stop looking at them. That's eye banging. It's
But
just like,
like in a really creepy way?
I mean, not intentionally, but like considering who I was and what I was like at the time, then almost certainly was creepy to everyone but me. I was going for kind of like smoldering and mysterious and sexy, but it almost certainly came across as just incredibly creepy because, you know,
Because why not? But like I never got good at flirting.
I got good at flirting. I've always that's something that I kind of pride myself on is I know how to flirt, but only because I had to learn. Because, like I say, if I stood at the side and waited for someone to come to me, it never happened. And
But
so,
like, do you mean flirting like after you start talking to someone? I
how do you
mean
flirt
like
with
in
someone
that.
before?
I mean in that like I'm looking at you from across the floor and
Like,
come to
oh,
me. I'm
hello.
smoldering. Like, how do people do that?
No idea. I've
It's just
always
so bizarre.
I have to use my words. Like word like body isn't gonna set anyone's pants on fire, and like my dancing certainly wasn't, and I couldn't smolder. I just looked stalkery. So all I had going for me was my words. So yeah, like going up and talking to
Um,
someone, very quickly lost any kind of fear around talking to strangers
I
because
am just like because I talk so softly, I just couldn't talk to anyone in class.
but you have such lovely dulcet tones. I could doze off listening to you talk about anything.
Yeah, but in a club where the music's really loud and I'm like, hey, I was that. You'll be like, oh yeah, I can't be bothered with this. Pretty much.
Probably,
So
yeah.
that's why I had to use my body.
I mean, whatever works. Like you had you it was a tool in your arsenal. It was not one I had. Like
Yeah, but I just like, oh no. I mean, I was just so sweaty in every club. So even that didn't work. Unless, you like profuse sweating. But some people really do like that.
yeah. I wore a lot of black to kind of cover that up because I would sweat a lot too. Between the just the kind of moist atmosphere and then dancing around a lot and also having drinks spilt on you and everything else. Like wearing a lot of black was really the only way to get through that. It was a black shirt with a red tie to match my red checkered pants.
Okay,
I
getting
know,
the
right?
visual, getting the visual. And so then what's your opening line when you're flirting?
The one I used to use all the time was "You look really familiar." Have I like you look really familiar? Have I spoken like have we spoken before? And that would
No, that
and
and that worked.
that it worked because they'd be like, "No, I don't think so," and I'd be like, "Oh, maybe like." Do we go to the same gym or do you live near me? And it's a good way to start a conversation. And then like within a couple of seconds, you'll know if they're interested enough to talk to you. And if not, then they'll just go, no. And you go, oh, right, never mind, sorry. And you move on like as gracefully as you can. Whereas if they're interested enough to talk to you, then you're in with a chance. All you have to then is find a way to charm them or flirt with them or slip into conversation that you've got an enormous penis. Something like that. Whatever works. Like,
I mean, why wouldn't you just start with that?
Because wandering up to someone and going, "Oi, I've got a big dick," does not work. Also, then like if
Depends what the club is, I guess.
yeah, and had that actually worked, they would have been extremely disappointed when they got me home. So,
okay, yeah. Don't start with that.
yeah,
But like,
very
do
small.
you ever do that when you're saying to someone, "Oh, like, do we know each other?" And they start to be like, "Yeah, yeah, you look familiar." And if they do you respect them more or less?
If they say that, then I would start. I mean, this barely ever happened, but I would have started to get excited because I'm like, oh, they've noticed me. They've seen me around. Maybe I am attractive to other people, and then yeah, they'd be like, "Yeah, weren't you that guy that like got absolutely hammered and made a tit of himself here last week?" I'm like, no, that must have been
Oh,
someone
you're the guy
else.
that follows Baz around everywhere, like a
Yes,
puppy
that
dog.
was definitely me. Bless Baz.
So having like because the club moved around and kind of petered out. I don't remember my last time there. Do you remember your last time?
Uh, I remember. Oh, I remember one time in Sin, in the little alternative room, there was a stage for dancing on, and all around the edge was like a shimmery gold curtain, like just against the wall, and I went to lean on it and managed to find the only part of it that was a door, and fell through this door and down a flight of stairs that was right next to the stage, and that for some reason hadn't been properly secured,
Did you
which was painful and humiliating.
did you get
No,
free
I didn't come.
drinks or anything?
No one saw, and I didn't make a fuss because I didn't want to. I didn't want anyone to know, so I just kind of like scrambled back up, closed the door, and then like leant against the wall until I could see straight, and everything had stopped hurting quite so much.
Oh, did you have impressive bruises though?
I can't remember. Probably. It was a long time ago. But the last time I was there, it hadn't like completely closed down. It was still going, and I left while the music was still good and the party was still. I wasn't there at the end of the night, and I didn't pull anyone, and I was all right with that. I'd had a good night. My friend pulled someone, and so he was in a good mood. And we staggered out of the end and down Charing Cross Road and onto the 88 or the 87 bus from Trafalgar Square that would take us back to our flats in Vauxhall, and it was a lovely night. And yeah, I think part of me definitely misses those nights. They were great fun. And even for someone who didn't like clubbing, I used to keep going back, and so that has to tell you something, I think.
Did you ever go to Popstarz? Well, if you did, I would love to hear about it. Find me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook with the username KAndersonMusic and tell me your stories, share your photos, tell me what songs you remember from that time. I want to have a conversation. And whilst you're at it, go and give Scott some love on Twitter. His profile name is Scott Flashheart. And on top of that, make sure that you give the Probably True podcast a spin or two. Lost Spaces is not only a podcast, but a concept record as well. I've been writing songs about queer venues and the people who used to live their lives there, and will be releasing songs over the next year. You can hear the first single, which is called Well Groomed Boys, and is also playing underneath my talking right now on all good streaming platforms. If you liked this episode, I would really appreciate if you took a few minutes to subscribe, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, or just tell someone or some things that you know who you think might be interested in giving it a little listen too. I am Kay Anderson, and you have been listening to Lost Spaces.